Look at it. Embedded from the just right? Why? How are you going to have a song?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think everybody's just about made their way in for our look at the repair and restoration shop. Hope everybody enjoyed the turntable demonstration, seeing a 1916 turntable with a 1904 steam locomotive on top of it. That's a very unique sight to see today, and was much more common in the early 20th century. But the disappearance of a lot of what you see here today was the reason for the creation of our museum in 1961. During that time frame, or prior to, of course, early 20th century, most individuals would be traveling behind steam locomotives like you saw today, traveled behind today. Indeed, on this main line, during the World War II era, about 70 trains per day would be traveling. By the Association of American Railroads estimation, that's 1 to 2 million individuals per month that were traveling the American Railroad network. But after World War II, the height of troop transportation, military, domestic shipments, things started to drop off a little bit. You had airlines, of course, like Pan Am and others, bus lines, interstate systems, that all started to take the ridership away from the American Railroad network. And our founders saw this happening, especially with the scrapping of steam engines, which were quickly being replaced by diesel electrics, even as the railroads were starting to wind down. And they wanted to start a museum to help preserve this local heritage of all the goods that were shipped, all the people that were shipped, and how the railroads really built the Chattanooga area. But what do you have to start a museum?
Money.
Yeah, money is very important. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, but you still have to turn a profit to keep your doors open, especially as a museum. What's other thing typical museums need to have? What's that? Antiques, yes, you need something for people to look at. You have to have a collection. And most museum collections typically will consist of small items that are in pull-out drawers with their display. They're taken out of the system and then put in small glass cases, carefully handled by curators with purple nitrile acid-free gloves, never to see high UV level light or high humidity conditions. But as you can tell, with our large artifacts here, they are not small and climate controlled. They are used for their intended purpose for which they were manufactured. So we actually had to go to the railroads themselves to source this collection. We started writing letters to all the railroads we could think of, begging, pleading, asking for any donations they could spare back then in the 60s that might be antiquated to them but artifacts to us. And eventually we got one. A dining car was donated to us by the Seaboard Airline Railroad Company and placed downtown in Chattanooga and turned into a restaurant at what was once formerly Terminal Station, now the Chattanooga Choo Choo. So we accomplished a couple of great things there. One, we got our first artifact. That's wonderful. Second, making a little bit of money. That's good for a nonprofit organization and a museum specifically. And third, good public relations is important for a museum to get continuous donors to build your organization. And eventually we got enough local support here that we could build this repair shop to maintain the world-class collection we have here, a world-class facility, as well as install the turntable components where you saw them here today. So now we'll look at just a snapshot of a few of the functions of the shop before we begin our reboarding process. If you do look up to the middle of the shop here, you'll notice a big yellow beam that goes through the width of the shop here. That is our 10-ton crane. Now the 10 tons that refers to is the capacity of the crane to lift objects up off the ground and put them back down again. Now, to put that in perspective tonnage-wise, a silver general lightweight coach like this 832 you might see out here, the Bud type coach Streamline, weighs about 60 to 70 tons total. So you can imagine we're not lifting cars or locomotives with the crane itself, but that's more for parts and pieces that need to come from one end of the shop to the other, like a large steam engine wheel set, an oil drum, something well within the weight limit of 10 tons. Now, occasionally it does require us to get underneath the collection, these locomotives, to maintain them, and it is not a simple task to do that. We do have 4 jacks we can use if we need to get the trucks out and replace them or do any work like that, but what if we simply need to get underneath it to work on it and leave it on the ground? Well, our solution for that is behind me. We have 2 drop pit areas here. It's a 6-foot deep drop that goes midway through the shop here. There are 2 of them side by side on these adjacent tracks here. That allows us to put the locomotives, rolling stock, directly on top of the 6-foot deep pit there and walk in from this end so we can see what's happening. It is fully lit underneath. And indeed, this is how the railroad shops of the early 20th century would have also handled it, with drop pits just like the ones you see here. Now, this area of the shop we're standing in is typically the short-term restoration area. So things that will come in here most typically will be quick in and out, usually a couple of weeks, never years-long projects for the most part. Much like you take your car to a mechanic if you need to get something serviced, oil change, air brake testing, engine tuning, brake shoe replacement. Those sorts of things can happen all in this general area, generator work, all that sort of thing. Now right now, this particular locomotive is a visitor with us here as it's getting ready for some photographs to be taken here shortly. This is an E8 type diesel electric locomotive from 1953. It was manufactured by the Electromotive Division of General Motors. And what's significant about this, it served on the Crescent route for the Southern Railway, New Orleans to Washington, D.C. But also, this is the type of locomotive directly that replaced the steam locomotives. And this really paved the way for the types of locomotives that we see today on modern lines like Norfolk Southern, CSX. This is really where that heritage lies here. And it recently received a repaint just in the past few months to appear in its 1953 appearance. And once we get a rewiring done and a few other things done to help restore this locomotive, it will be returning to service with us here at the museum as well. Now at the far end of the shop, those are where our more long-term restoration projects take place. One in particular is a 1917 business car you'll see on the other side of the 6914 here. It was used by the Vice President of the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad as his private office business car. It does have an observation deck at the rear end of it. Very nice wooden paneling inside, sleeping quarters, showers, as well as fine place settings for dinner on the rails, quite simply. And very much first class luxe accommodations. So that right now is being assessed for all the different spots that might need replaced, as these cars were never meant to be lasting well over 100 years from now. They were meant to have a very short service life. So we're doing assessments to make sure all is back up to par, replacing paneling, doing repainting, grinding, all that needs to be done. So that will eventually go on longer excursions behind our big steam engine so people can know what it was like in the early 20th century, especially around World War II, what first class accommodations would have looked like in a car of that nature, a heavyweight type car. Now, as you might imagine, we have many people who can do things well here. We have people who can acid wash our stainless collection here. We have people who can repaint, refit, replicate just about anything you can think of with the appropriate amount of effort and money. One of the most significant things that we do here actually concerns our steam engine wheels you see over there. Now, our steam engines both, as all steam engines are unique, and they actually have a tire around the big, large cast driving wheels. Each one of them has a metal ring that goes around it. And that's significant for us here in Chattanooga, as we have 3 machines at this end of the shop down here. They're called a journal lathe, a quartering machine, and a wheel lathe at the far end past our business car that allow us to put new steel rings on the outside of those driving wheels from start to finish and make sure they're in perfect spec with the others. That tire is actually what makes contact with the surface of the rail and allows you traction to move forward. Much like a tire on your car, a similar concept. So we wear out just that steel ring around it. It's about that thick, not the actual cast driving wheel itself. We can replace them. And that actually keeps our locomotives on the rails as we restore both of those here in the shop and did all the wheel work here in the shop. But that's also pointing to a national significance, as we are the only shop in North America that has all 3 independently up and operating under one roof. It's kind of a one-stop shop here in Chattanooga for steam engine wheel repair. We've done work for various different famous locomotives you might have heard of in the region as well as nationally. And that allows us to keep our collection up on the rails for you folks today to understand what it was like back then, as well as preserve it for other railroads that might need a little bit of assistance to keep theirs up and running as well. Folks, with that, we want to thank you very much for taking a brief snapshot of a look behind the scenes with us here. As a final note, it's always important to ask us why this is all important. Why is it important for us to have 2 functioning steam engines over here getting ready for a doubleheader to Somerville, Georgia tomorrow, to run the local, to repaint this in its 1953 appearance? What's the point to all this? Well, our key mission here at the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum does involve education. It is important that we educate people about how the railroads did and continuously impact our lives today. And today, I imagine every single one of you brought something with you on the Missionary Ridge local, whether it was clothing, shoes, bags, hats, anything you can think of, cameras, and you probably drove a car here as well. Well, the reason that's important is that the railroads were probably involved in every single part of that at some point in that consumable goods life. We rely on the railroads to transport our vehicles. Every single thing that you brought with you today might have been on a container at some point before it went to a distribution center or Walmart.com, Amazon.com, wherever you got it. And it is due to the hard work of these lines, like the Southern Railway, that then would become Norfolk Southern, or the L&N, the Louisville and Nashville, that would later become CSX, or other regional as well as national lines. It is due to the work of these railroads that we owe it to the conveniences that we have today. So that's why it's important for us to remember the experiences as well as importance of these older lines like this so that we can know where transportation will take us into the future, folks. And with that, we want to thank you very much for coming to listen here at the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum. We're now going to make our way over across the tracks from whence we came and to the right to reboard. And don't forget to stop into the East Chattanooga Depot if you'd like to purchase any snacks, handmade ice cream, or cold beverages for the return trip for your enjoyment, folks. So right this way across the tracks, and we will begin reboarding here in just a moment.